Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 15th, 2023 Lower Makefield Township Board of Supervisors meeting. Just a reminder that public comment will be available on each agenda item as it comes up. You know how to join, but if you've forgotten, please look at the township website and you'll find the Zoom information there. And with that, I will call this meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. With that, we'll take the roll. John, are you here?
Present.
James?
Present.
Dan?
Here.
I am here, and to Mr. and Mrs. Coyle, happy anniversary. You are missed. With that, community announcements. This is the opportunity where people can either call in to give a community announcement or send them into admin@lmt.org to have it placed on the agenda. The one that we do have on the agenda appears to have taken place already, so it was a very successful recycling event. The e-waste recycling event.
Yes, yes, I apologize. Yes, that happened this past Saturday. It was a successful event. Again, just for purposes of the public and also for the board's reminder, this was funded through a grant that Bucks County makes available. And so the cost associated with the event will be entirely reimbursed through a county program. And then we're also looking at the potential of hosting these events jointly with Yardley Borough in the coming year, but waiting to hear whether that grant program is going to be continued by the county. So again, good event, intermunicipal cooperation, and we'll look for opportunities to do similar things in the future.
Thank you for that. And I thank you for bringing up that we are looking to see. It's something we used to do, and I appreciate you going out of the way to get that grant and work with the other municipalities to move it forward. And then, James, did you have something you wanted to add?
I did. Patterson Farm Preservation has partnered with Commonplace Reader Bookstore in Yardley to collect toys for its tots, Toys for Tots for the holiday season. A Toys for Tots donation box has been placed at Commonplace Reader, which is located at 49 South Main Street in Yardley. All donations are appreciated.
Thank you. The other supervisors? Anybody in the room? Anybody online? Okay, then we're moving right along to agenda item number 5, which is the treasurer's report.
Back to me. So you have in your packets this evening the treasurer's report for the 11/15 meeting, which is tonight. There is 2023 month to date revenues of $513,011.29. Month to date expenses of $3.553,365.24. And for 2023 year to date, our revenues are at $25,161,884.93. And our expenses are at $26,011,877.46. So if anybody has any questions regarding the specific year to date numbers.
No, but do we want to do the consider approvals of the interfund transfers? I don't know if.
I want to do those separately, just separate motions.
I think we're going to pause and come back to that because I'm not sure that James has that information handy.
Do you have those? Oh,
I can do
never
that.
mind. He has them there. I can do them now.
The pause.
Thank you.
I will sing during the pause.
Sure.
Here we go.
So for that's it. I'd like to make a motion to consider approval for September 2023 interfund transfers in the amount of $1,233,566.82.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded by John. Is there any discussion by the board? Any public comment? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any no opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
I'd like to make a motion to consider approval of the October 2023 interfund transfers in the amount of $837,283.04.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded by John. Any public comment from the board? Any public comment in the room? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0.
And Dave, I don't have the warrants list in front of me. There it is.
Which one's this number
one.
and that date?
Got you. I'd like to make a motion to consider approval of warrant list from October 2nd, 2023 in an amount of $443,810.45.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded by John. Any comment by the board? Any public comment? That I call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
I'd also like to make a motion to consider approval of warrants list from October 16th, 2023 in the amount of $609,053.60.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded by John. Any public comment by the board? Any public comment in the room? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
I have one additional warrant list here, but Mr. Truelove, it's not on the agenda, so I'm not sure if I can make a motion on it.
November 6th is on the agenda.
You just
It's a
made.
hanger on at the bottom.
Oh, there it is. Never mind. Got to get those eyes checked. I'd like to make a motion for the consider approval of warrants list from November 6th, 2023 in the amount of $1,864,269.04.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded by John. Any public comment, any comment from the board? Any public comment? Hearing none, the motion, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Thank you. We are now on to agenda. Oops, sorry. We are now on to agenda item number 6, the engineer's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For Supervisors, we have 4 items on the agenda this evening. The first of which is a consideration for pay application number 2 for this year's road program. It's in the amount of $94,648.40. As we do with all payment certificate applications, there are quantities that are confirmed by our inspection team as being completed in full by the contractor, and then they're applied for payment out of the contract. The remaining amount of the contract following this payment is $215,253.96. The final punch list items for the contractor has been issued, the last of which a follow-up to them was earlier this month on the 8th. So we do have 3 items that they're still finishing up. And obviously we do a final check with everything before any kind of final payment request. But for tonight, it's their payment application number 2.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve pay application number 2 for the 2023 liquid fuels program in the amount of $94,648.40.
Second.
Motion made by James and seconded by John. Is there any discussion from the board?
Amendment to the comment was made by John and seconded by James.
Thank you.
Yep.
Just get into habits. I'm just waiting for any comments from anyone on the board.
I'll ask the usual one. Pay applications usually mean that you've done some inspections and they've checked the boxes for you and everything's been completed satisfactorily. So I always ask the question when we're have to pay some money if that's the case. So
They have, yes.
no other questions.
Did we review all ADA ramps that were part of this year's road program?
We have, yeah, we
Okay.
check them for the required slopes and landing areas and make sure they're all compliant before we.
And the epoxy stuck on all of them?
No, we haven't run into that. So all the warning services look good.
Oh, okay.
Good question.
Anything else from the board? Any public comment? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. The second item we have this evening is for the South Drive Culvert Replacement Project. This is a change order identified as change order number 2. These are 4 items that have kind of come to fruition during the construction process.
just a little bit of background with this project. For the timing of it to be done in this calendar year, when it was being prepared for public bid, it was released with the pending final plans from Contech, which is the manufacturer that does the actual culvert. With that, some of the quantities around the culvert replacement or the installation of that were basically to be determined as construction got underway. And that's what's reflected in the change order this evening. You have the 4 items that are included here, one of which is some additional backfill quantity in the areas of the wing walls in the 4 corners related to where the anchors go under the road, related to the culvert wing walls. Similar to that, there's a section of guide rail at each of those 4 corners. And then a supplemental item was the contractor support for when the Contech delivery was made with the actual culvert materials to be offloaded and installed in place. The last item, or I should say the kind of third of the 4 in there, but wanted to touch on it last, is the additional bypass pumping for about a week's time that was related to the PA American Water's work of relocating their utility. This is a line that the American Water Company has already confirmed that they've paid that to the township. So that item, although it's in the change order here for the township to approve for the contractor's payment, it is paid to the township already. And then we basically relay that payment to the contractor for basically that work on site while the water company was doing that week-long relocation. So with that, that's about 50% of the total that we have here tonight. That one line item is $38,046.48. The total change order for the 4 items are $76,900.58.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve change order number 2 for the South Drive culvert replacement project in the amount of $76,900.58.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion made by John and seconded by Dan. Is there any discussion from the board? Yes, Dan.
On that last item, that $38,000 with PA Water, did the township incur any direct cost for any of that work, or was that completely covered by PA Water?
That is completely covered by PA Water. So that item or that amount there is the amount on the check from PA Water for the township.
Yes, John.
This was part of the issue was a one call issue. We made the call and we didn't identify, or pardon me, the one call did not identify correctly that the location of the water main. Is that correct?
Correct. So when the one calls go in, each utility that it triggers has a response. We've met with PA American Water to kind of discuss the steps that happen there. They have basically 2 pretty drastic options they can respond with: all clear, or they have a physical conflict with where the depth is. So they have their water line there. Obviously, that was discovered during construction, but it was deeper than where they would have triggered the other response. We've already discussed, for projects going forward, more scheduled kind of face-to-face meetings with them that we can just look at everything together as we go through the design and, avoid that situation for anything going forward.
Yeah, the reason why I asked the question specifically is we've had people come to us and accuse us of making mistakes when the issues are with one call or other utilities. And in those cases, the utilities are actually paying for the mistake. We had a similar case with a large telecommunications company, and we were accused of not doing our job on it. So I wanted to make sure that people know that this was not, obviously no one intends, the one call people don't intend to make mistakes. Those do occur, but we just want people to know that we are following procedures with all of those folks. When do we expect that the project will be totally complete?
The last items in the contract that are remaining are just the repaving of the project area. We're requesting the contractor to wrap everything up before the end of November.
Okay.
They're just coordinating their paving crew to get back as soon as possible to do that work.
So I was in the neighborhood 2 weeks ago, maybe, and there was still a sign up for road closures. That been removed, or people can drive over it now, or is it still?
It is open for driving. Yeah. It's safe to drive over. It's not fully paved yet.
Okay,
We can coordinate with the contractor as far as that sign saying road closed so that it's as clear as possible for folks.
excellent. Thank you.
Yes.
On the one call issue without without getting off track here and trying to keep to the agenda, I do think if we can look at ways to I don't know if there are ways to impress upon one call that they need to be very good at identifying utilities. I think it was our last meeting, our last township, not a budget meeting, but a last regular meeting. There were some comments made about utilities that were impacted as part of at Mapleville as part of that work that went on. But in fact, that was a one call issue where they had to refund us for not identifying those utilities correctly. So I think one call is a very important for those that don't know what one call is. Whenever you call before you dig, if you ever see those commercials, so you call 811, 411, depending on where you are, and they identify buried utilities for you as best they can, given the information that they have from all the different utility companies, and different utility companies will supplement that, oftentimes come out and identify their own resources. So that we rely on that just like everybody else does before we dig. So if they don't get it right, then we're going to find out about it during construction. So we just got to make sure that the one call folks are, not to throw them under the bus by any means, but they're a very important part of this. So we don't have slowdowns in construction. It doesn't cost people money. Anyway.
Yeah, and just to add to that a little bit, just to kind of explain it to folks, for our design projects or capital work, there's two steps to that one call pretty much. There's a design one call, and then there's one that goes on in construction. This one, obviously, that was in construction is where they actually come out and mark certain things that they have from their plans. Both are required. The design one, they don't actually come out and mark most of the time. They'll send some plans, some of which are current, some of which are, coming out of a drawer that have been, under dust for a while. So that's where that additional step of just meeting with them, getting, it could be someone that works there that just has more knowledge that's been there for decades. That's like, oh yeah, we have a water line under that part. So that's where the one call, it's not a perfect system, but as you said, it's very important. And then the additional meetings with not only the water company, but, Pico Gas, any other utilities can help just minimize the occasion where something may pop up that was unexpected during construction.
Any public comment? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. My third item this evening is an escrow release request. This is for the Prickett Preserve development that's under construction. It's their financial security release request number 9. It is in the amount of $591,991. The remaining after this amount requested would be $1,615,403.50. So it's quite a large development, as you know. They've been moving along fairly well. A lot of work. They're anticipating to have the Wegmans in early 2024 open and the whole 9. So the Prickett Preserve this evening, their completed items since their last payment is their release number 9 that they're requesting tonight.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we consider and approve escrow release number 8 for the Prickett Preserve to ELU DeLuca Yardley LLC in the amount of $591,991.00.
Second.
Motion made by John, seconded by James. I don't know what that was. Is
Just
there
to
any
clarify, the amount you stated is correct. It is release number 9 for their order of releases that they've had.
Madam Chair, I'd like to amend my motion to say release number 9.
Amend the second.
Thank you. Any discussion from the board? Yes, Dan?
Usual question. Got to get you on the record every time, you know it. Based on your inspections and analysis, this meets all the requirements for release?
Yes.
Okay. Does this include, you said moving along fairly well. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I think anyone that's been sitting in traffic on the bypass around there as that work goes on may have a different opinion on it.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, I've done it as well unexpectedly. Without getting off track, that is not included in this, I assume.
Correct. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the PennDOT roadway there, which is much further along than it was a couple of weeks ago, but
Yeah.
still.
My
has its traffic stops.
understanding is it's open at this point. It just opened maybe today or.
It is.
Oh, is it
Yeah,
fully open?
yeah, it
It
is
is almost
open, yeah,
fully
yeah.
open. Yeah, some
Did the-
striping maybe that remains.
95 did the double turn on Stony Hill and
Thumbs up, thumbs down.
it flowed very easily, but then again, it was also 12:30.
Gotcha.
Right.
Anyway, not to
Promises.
get on that one, target. That's all I wanted to ask.
John or James?
Nothing.
Any public comment? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0. And then we are at the engineer's report, general project updates. So
Yes, our full reports included for the board's packet. Just a couple of highlights we wanted to make since our last meeting for the Woodside Road Bike Path project or the multi-use path. We had our latest meeting with the utility companies on November 10th. This was a follow-up just to make sure everyone's on the same page and they didn't need anything else before they would start their process to get the poles relocated. They confirmed they have that. We answered a couple last questions they had. So that starts their process, Pico and Verizon. They do still have on track for that process to kind of have those poles relocated as we go into the winter here, probably in the first month or two after the new year. And that would kind of position us to adjust the trails where we need to once those are moved as the weather warms up again and we can have paving again and hopefully finish that up as quickly as possible. Kind of related to that, Taylorsville Road, the crossing to connect this trail with the Joint Toll Bridge Commission's trail. We've reached out and had connections and conversations with PennDOT. We met with township staff looking to start the process of just getting the permit required information together to package that up and get that in as we go through the next couple of weeks here. So that's something we're also hoping will kind of keep going at a good pace so we can get that set up to connect the trail there.
So let me just interrupt you a second, because as long as we're talking about Woodside Road, Dave, I know that Derek has looked at it and I know he's talked to the bridge people, but that indentation that's developing because of the sliding that's happening underneath the hill or whatever that is, the waviness, thank you, engineer. But that we have any update on how they're going to try to fix that or?
I don't have any, and again, as you said, Derek has been in communication. Michael Baker, I think, who was the design engineer on that, was going to investigate that and ultimately provide a suggested remedy to the Bridge Commission. Do you know where that stands? I haven't heard any updates on that.
I don't have
recently.
any further update than that, but I can touch base with Derek and
Yeah, we can
follow up on
find
that.
that.
for you.
Yeah, I know that when it was first brought up, there was some concern, right? That road is deceivingly treacherous when it's icy and snowy. And as that, weather starts to approach, it might be good to see, obviously probably can't be fixed at this point, but maybe there's some things we could do to help it. So thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Please continue.
Not at all. The other item I just wanted to mention this evening, we had our open house event on the 9th of November for the Highland Drive, Maple Vale area drainage improvements. This project is the one that's focused on Highland Drive coming down to Taylorsville. It was great to see a lot of folks there. I see a few here tonight, get their feedback, really talk about what this project's focused on and how it kind of fits in the overall picture with some of the more global things that Land Studies is looking at and just the more general area. So our next steps are to get our design finalized, get the permitting required finalized, and we're still aiming to have that bid package ready as we go into December. So we'll look forward to bringing that to the board once we have that in kind of that final stage for everybody.
Can you anticipate that at the first meeting in December?
At least the request authorized to move into that bidding phase, yes. And then the permitting, as we talk with DEP, might be a timeline that we have to just get a best understanding of what they need. But as soon as that's ready, we'll look to have it up for public bid.
I mean, obviously, this is something of great concern, and while I don't want, any corners to be cut, I also don't want to not give the full force so we can keep it moving forward. So you could strike that right balance. Dan, is there something else you wanted to say?
Yeah, I guess, do we have, when you mentioned permitting, do we have a pre-app meeting scheduled with DEP and or Corps?
We don't have one on the calendar yet, but we've started that conversation to get one scheduled with them as soon as we can.
I would just send them an email requesting the pre-app meeting so they can get on their twice a month schedule or whatever they're doing these days.
We will, yeah. And the folks that we talked to for this are the same folks that we were talking with the emergency permits and kind of that general area. So it's
So along those
familiar
lines,
faces. Yeah.
and I know the DEP was generally a little more open to things, at least early part of the conversation. Have we, from Maple Vale specifically, have we gotten, and this, Dave, this may be for you too, because I know they were having telephone calls.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still are. Have we gotten anything new from DCNR, from, I guess, DEP related to DCNR or PennDOT or anyone else about improvements to the pipes that we've previously replaced and are looking at others? No. The second pipe, or even third pipe, I guess, if we want to talk about all three that are in proximity, or potential PennDOT improvements to the culvert that goes under Taylorsville that seems after the 90-degree bend that goes onto our property. Have we gotten any feedback from them, or is that something where we have?
No, we have not gotten any additional feedback from them on any of those items. I know on some of those items, Derek continues to follow up, particularly with the maintenance related items. And they continue to note that they're aware and we're on their schedule, but they don't really provide definitive responses in terms of that, other than that they articulate a general commitment to address some of those issues. I don't know if you have anything further on the DP side of things, because we were going to submit, I guess, the revised emergency permits, and then so I don't know if you want to take that.
Yeah, just I guess the last thing to add for the permitting is that's like the more permanent permitting with that, following the emergency ones are in the process of getting kind of finalized, submitted. They gave us a bit of an extension from what was permitted before, just to not have a gap there with all the work that's going on in that area. And to Dave's point, as hard as the townships, pushing for these improvements and the pace that we can move, PennDOT and those agencies do move a little bit of a slower pace. So not as an excuse or anything that says that we're kind of ignoring that piece of the whole puzzle in that area. But as we're getting these projects move along as quickly as we can as a township, hopefully that PennDOT and some of those other pieces can come in and as soon as they're able to go forward, they can be a part of the improvements down there.
Sounds to me like, sounds to me like that's continued advocacy by board members and other members of the public to our state officials at PennDOT, at DCNR, our state reps, potentially state senator, who are involved with others and may be able to move things forward, help us move things forward. So it's combined. It's not just an engineering effort. It's an outreach effort too. So it's not all on your shoulders to get all that stuff done. I did attend the open house last week. I thought it was pretty well attended. I thought the feedback was good, pretty interactive, sort of workshop style. So we had the three boards up, so you could see a couple different things. I don't want to speak for anyone that was there, but it was generally well received, I think. So that's good. Just hopefully we can move it forward fairly quickly so that we can get things done. I will just generally on the report. I know we've got I know no one in the public can see this, but we've got a mix of bolds and highlights and whatnot. If we could generally just put the meeting date in bold ahead of the latest notes, you could just say this is what we're looking at as of November 15th, something like that. That would make it stand out. That way we know what's outstanding versus new. Other than that, I think I'm pretty good with questions.
John or James?
Nothing at this time. Thanks.
Any public comment? Feel free to come up to the mic. It should be on, but if you just tap it.
And it is.
And
Bill Gabota, 1230 Ash Lane in the township. I've been delighted to see the bike paths be constructed, but I am still concerned that that bike path that goes down that hill ends rather abruptly in a whole pile of Armco barrier at the bottom of the hill. Now, there was some barrier that was put up at the next intersection up the hill, but it's been moved aside and there is no warning that there's nowhere to go when you get to the bottom, especially if you have any speed. Is there any possibility of putting some signs there? And, you know, like I know people will tend to move it because they want to get around it and they want to ride their bikes, but I think it's very dangerous and there's nowhere to go. Any thoughts on that from the board, from the engineer?
We can definitely look into that with the contractor. Yeah, get some additional signage.
Because there's really nothing there that prevents them from going hell for leather down that slope.
as you said, we do have barriers up and people do keep moving them,
Yeah.
which is,
Yeah.
is problematic. John maybe Dave made the joke before about whether or not the road was repaired and whether or not people were driving on it. It is an issue
Yes.
that
of
we
course.
face more than you might imagine. So.
Yeah, no, I realize it's an issue. It's just that I go that way nearly every day and I go, somebody's going to die. Thank you for your concern.
Thank you. But specifically, I know you're not done yet, but I wanted to get the Maple Vale people their opportunity to
Thank you.
speak, so.
I don't know if this is related to that, but I was wondering when we would have an update from land studies. We understood to be around time of Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I do
should've
need
said
to
April
check in.
Woolwich Or Makefield Township resident. My bad.
I do need to check in with them. They are continuing to do their work. I would expect, I think we said November, December, but I will get a more concrete update in terms of their work.
And I don't know if this is the time or if it's for later, but I know we've mentioned a couple of times comments on having stormwater management or something related to the flood added to the agenda. Mike, I have a question tonight. How do we get it added to the agenda, or can we not? Do we need a petition? Do we need to find other outlets to petition for us? Like, how do we ensure that this topic is a topic that will be added to the agenda on a regular basis so that we're not just checking? It might be buried under the engineer's report. It wasn't even clear tonight that it would be covered under the other updates for the
You
engineer.
can rest assured it's going to be covered under the engineer's report until we're done with it.
Okay.
So usually it's action items, like if we're going to vote on something that's on the agenda.
Mhm.
But that's something,
Okay.
I'm here for 2 more meetings, so we'll discuss it for the next 2 meetings. I'm sure who's ever here in January will.
So we can know that our time would be related to this under engineer's report.
Correct.
Okay.
And if we make it a separate agenda item because something big happens and we get the report back, then you'll see it
Okay.
there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
of course. I'm going to shut off your mic. No. Anybody else want to talk about, because I did interrupt him again, but I did want to have an opportunity for you guys if you wanted to talk about where we are with those projects. So any other comments? Anything else you want to share with us?
That's all I have for this evening, unless there's any other questions.
I'm sure Dan has something, so.
I try to keep it all in 1-2 minute spiel. I'm good.
Oh, all right. Anybody else? Okay, so we're closing the engineer report section of the agenda. And I did want to say, I meant to call it out earlier, so my apologies. We have an item on the agenda that, depending on when you looked at the agenda, 10A, it was a voting item, and it still isn't a voting item, but there's been an application for an extension related to 1674 Edgewood Road, 691 Point Trolio. So just know that if you're here to talk about that, that's going to be voted on for an extension. Okay. So, yes. Oh, manager's report, 7, please continue.
Okay, so 7A, consider approval of Kohl's extended hours request. As I understand, this is a customary request that Kohl's makes during the holiday shopping season. It is, the proposed schedule is in your packet. Chief has reviewed it, I think, as he's customarily done. And I understand, well, you can speak for yourself, but I don't believe he has any objection. But again, if you want to.
So moved.
No objection.
Second.
No. Oh, take his mic. Is there a motion?
Yeah, so moved.
Second from Dan, you were fast. Okay, so motion made by John James, seconded by Dan. Any comments from the board?
Yeah,
ahead.
quick
Yes,
question.
John.
Applicant is a former client of the company I work for in a de minimis amount, has not been a client previously or currently.
There'll be no,
And then the total amount, like, I'm guessing less than $500,000, just roughly, but I don't know for sure.
there's no conflict.
Okay,
No current, relationship.
Any public?
always up for full disclosure.
And everybody's eligible for Coles Cash, so that's not a.
Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, motion passes 3 with 1 opposed. Thank you.
So the next item was an item that has previously been discussed. What we're seeking is authorization to issue an RFQ for consulting services to assist with amending the township's stormwater management ordinance to reflect certain realities, obviously, that we're dealing with from a stormwater perspective, but also make sure that the ordinance is incorporating and requiring the most innovative sort of best management practices from a stormwater perspective. So we are currently finishing completion of the RFP/RFQ, but in the interest of being in a position to issue that and get responses and start that work, we're here this evening requesting the board's authorization to release.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded by John. Any conversation from the board? Yes, Dan.
Obviously, I feel it's very important that we do it. We need to update our stormwater regs for a variety of reasons, not just because of what happened in July, but it's important to keep these up to date. I'm curious about execution though. Is this something that could possibly be in the wheelhouse of land studies? Because I feel like one of their recommendations might be update your stormwater management ordinance. And if it is that something that we could start sooner if we ask them to do it as part of a change order or something?
You could potentially do that. Generally, I think they've, on these kinds of efforts, I did have some sort of informal conversation with them. They generally do partner with a civil engineering, a more full service sort of civil engineering firm. So I don't know that they would respond direct or respond in partnership with somebody as a sub-consultant. But we could do, I mean, they could respond regardless, but if you're more interested in terms of timing, right?
I'm wondering, and because again, it's all about what services they provide. I'm wondering if they could just start on it now, or if we have to wait to go through a formal RFP process. And there's probably a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I could commit that they have the ability to do that, or whether they would respond either individually or in partnership with another firm on sort of the ordinance writing side of things. But again, as the solicitor mentioned, they could respond. We can make this a very abbreviated process from an RFQ process. It doesn't, again, it's a professional service. We could solicit proposals, relatively quickly, and then, decide on whether we're going to interview respondents, those kinds of things. But we just wanted to get it out.
I appreciate that. And you want to get responses that answer the mail and they know what they're doing. My assumption is that land studies could. I don't know them well enough. That's why I asked the question, but whatever we need to do to get it done, move forward.
Any other comment from the board? I mean, I would say similar but different. I know we have a lot going on internally about ordinances, et cetera, that we're looking at. Issue of boarding houses, issue of dilapidated homes, issue of signage on commercial property. So I know there's a lot in process right now, and I do want to keep trying to move forward with it all, even as we enter the holiday season. So I appreciate getting this on the agenda and hopefully moving forward. Any public comment? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes 4-0.
The next item relates to just a general announcement concerning the 2024 budget adoption process. As the board is aware, we've scheduled a special meeting for Monday, November the 20th, beginning at 6:30 here at the building. The hope is, depending on how that conversation goes, that the board would adopt a preliminary budget and authorize the budget being made available for public inspection, which would permit adoption at your December 20th meeting after the required 20-day public inspection period. So that was just a general sort of comment for purposes of the public. Do you want me to just roll into the next item? Okay. So the next item is for your consideration is Resolution 23-28, which would authorize the submission of an application for a statewide local share assessment grant. This would be for the purchase of a replacement for our existing tub grinder, which we use for purposes of both yard waste recycling as well as processing leaf material that we collect. Approximately 3/4 of the leaves that are collected through curbside collection are processed using this tub grinder. The LSA, which is a statewide program, does permit grants up to $1 million. The cost of that equipment is a little bit shy of $1.3 million based on an estimate that was received from a contractor. Obviously, we have an existing piece of apparatus to be sold, so there's potential of recovering some of that gap if we were successful with this grant through the sale of the existing piece of equipment. But again, this is an opportunity. It's a no match grant, though. Again, the cost of the improvement is beyond the maximum amount of the grant. So we would recommend applying for that. The existing piece of equipment is from 2004, so it's getting quite old, and again is heavily used within our yard waste and leaf composting operation.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by James and seconded by John. Any discussion? Any public comment? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your turn, Dave.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the solicitor's report, there was an executive session tonight that began at 6 p.m. All board members who are present tonight were present at the executive session along with Mr. Kratzer, Chief Coluzzi, and myself. Items discussed included litigation, personnel, real estate, and informational items. And that executive session concluded just before this meeting started. The only item under my report is consider ordinance number 442 to amend the Lower Makefield Township subdivision and land development ordinance related to open space requirements. As folks may recall, the intent of this ordinance is to mimic in many ways the already enacted zoning ordinance, which included the many open space requirements. It's been through many reviews, both at the local level and the county level. I know there may be some concern, not concerns, but some, ideas about changing some of the verbiage. I think what we would recommend, and we would recommend enactment of this tonight because it's been properly advertised. And if there are any changes to be made to any definitions or any other verbiage, that be done in an omnibus way to mimic both the zoning ordinance, anything else in our code of ordinances that might also be impacted by that. So that's my only comment on that. So it would be appropriate if you're so inclined to move to consider enacting ordinance 442.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Dan, seconded by James. Any public comment? A comment from the board?
It generally, obviously, we're seeing a lot of pressure on development come up right now, different across various zones. So it's important that we do whatever we can to preserve open space as best we can within the limits of the law, and amend our zoning and saldo such that we have some say in what gets built and how it gets for future generations. To our solicitor's point about definitional issues. I know staff is looking at that, and I've obviously been one to raise those questions, and I support that approach. We come to terms on what those terms actually mean.
If I could offer also an observation before any other board comment. I mean, this and the zoning ordinance, I would submit are the most far-reaching ordinances impacting land development zoning since 2006, 2007. The prior boards did with the some of the ordinances back then. So I commend this board and for taking that on, given a lot of the discussion that's occurred, and believe that they are at the cutting edge for a lot of these things. So I commend them for that.
We get more work to do on some of them.
Absolutely.
Any other supervisors?
Just one question, what was provided was 441 in the thing,
Oh, I'm sorry. I know that.
and then the agenda says 442, and I just don't want somebody coming back. So the file name is 441, but if it's legitimately 442, then that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, what's in the agenda is not, or what's in the packet is not numbered. So.
Right, so whatever we do.
Well, what I would suggest is to amend the motion to enact the open space ordinance with the number to be supplied consistent.
Yep, that's fine.
Whatever the appropriate legislation.
Oh, yeah, I will support that as a
Yeah.
seconder.
Absolutely.
So that amendment is accepted. And any other discussion? Thank you, John, for that.
Yeah, sorry.
No, no,
I'm
that's
generally
okay.
very supportive of this. I mean, it's gone through a lot of hashing. Is it perfect? No. Is it 80+% there? 90 probably. We have a lot of work to do in land use over the upcoming year. For those who are wondering, we will be looking at a lot of ordinances. I think all board members agree. We've got some work, as you just saw with the RFP on stormwater management. So we're going to be looking comprehensively at all of our land development ordinances over the coming years.
Thank you. James,
Nothing.
any public comment? You can, Bill, if you don't mind, would you please come up first? And if you could state your full name and whether or not you live in the township.
Certainly. Susan Finney, and I live at 2220 Yardley Morrisville Road. Madam Chairman and Board, are you all looking into the possibility of grants for acquisition of open space as part of your overall plan in reviewing ordinance, preserving green space for the town?
Generally speaking, we're always looking for grants. There's not a lot of grants for those types, the size of those acquisitions, but yes.
If for additional character, the county has floated bonds for open space, has provided grants. We used as much of those as possible, and we've looked for every one of those that we could. That money's out right now. Is it conceivable the township could float a bond in the future for open space? Possibly. But I would be hoping that the county might look to do that again. It's something they do, and they will issue a bond for a large chunk of money and then parcel it out over time. So we're always, I don't think there's anybody who's opposed to trying to capture open space when possible.
Thank you.
Bill? And just state your name again, Bill.
Bill Gabota, 1230 Ash Lane in the township. When you pass this, and I hope you do, because we do need to protect our open space the best we can. If this is passed, will it have any impact on current developments or only developments that will start after this point?
The way the law is, and I'll say unfortunately, and we've looked at this many ways in the last several months, only when an ordinance is enacted is it then effective in terms of anything that comes after it. Anything that's been applied before that. And there's litigation that's been proceeded all the way to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania regarding what's called the pending ordinance doctrine. It's barely on life support, unfortunately. Those of us on our side would like to see it become more supported. But the way things stand now, the short answer is no. We have to deal with it. And that's, I think, one reason, especially why this board did a good job. And part of the problem is, I don't want to belabor this, but to enact an ordinance of this type takes quite a while. You have to go through, for good reasons, you have to go through a lot of reviews. So if developers see that this is in process, they can take advantage of the required legislation that we have to follow in order to get something in before that's done. So we're kind of caught up in a very challenging situation, but this board did what it could as quickly as it could to get this enacted in a way that's going to impact anything after this. So
It looks good. I read it and I said, well done. Thank you very much.
And hopefully a few developers that may have come in just before will be willing to work with us.
seemed to be, yeah, hopefully.
Any other public comment? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Next, under zoning hearing board, there are three matters. First one, appeal number Z-23-2036 Connivus/McKenna for property located at 1038 Harbor Drive, tax parcel number 20-022-102. Applicants request a variance from Township Zoning Ordinance 200-23 capital B in order to install an in-ground fiberglass pool, which would increase the impervious surface from the existing 20.9% to 23%, where 18% is the allowable amount. I would note that in the application, there is a stormwater mitigation that's included. Given the status that most of us have approached these matters with, we would recommend participation.
Madam Chair, I move that we participate in appeal number Z-23-2036.
Second.
Motion made by John, seconded by James. Any discussion by the board? Any public comment? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Next, appeal number Z-23-2037 McCubbin/Gilmore for property located at 815 Hudson Drive, tax parcel 20-025-231. Applicant requests a variance from Township Zoning Ordinance 200-23B in order to install an in-ground concrete pool, which would increase the impervious surface from the existing 25.4% to 29.5%, where 18% is the allowable amount. Again, applicant has provided stormwater mitigation. I don't have the actual calculations, but under the circumstances, we again recommended a minimum participation.
Madam Chair, I move that the township participate in appeal number Z-23-2037.
Second.
Motion made by James, seconded, motion made by John, seconded by James. Any comment from the board? Any public comment? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. The final matter is appeal number Z-23-2038 Mahamitra for the property located at 1315 Knox Drive, tax parcel 20-058-127. The applicant requests a variance from Township Zoning Ordinance 200-23B. It's the theme tonight. In order to install a patio, which would increase the impervious surface from the existing 19.1% to 23.3%, where again, 18% is the allowable amount. And once again, for the same reasons, and the applicant did include stormwater mitigation in the form of a trench surrounding the proposed patio. We recommend participation.
Madam Chair, I move that the township participate in appeal number Z-23-2038.
Second.
Motion made by John, seconded by James. Any comment from the board? Any public comment? With that, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. We are on to agenda item 10, community development. Jim, you want to come on up?
Good evening. For item number 10A, we have before the board a request for consideration of an extension of time to act upon the plan for 1674 Edgewood Road, also known as the Point or the Trailer Project, until the date of December 31st of this year.
So moved.
Second. Any comment from the board?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh, no.
Want to go?
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah.
So help me out on the timing around this. Is the intent that the applicant will be providing a revised application in time for our next meeting or the second meeting in December?
I believe they indicated that they'd like to come to the first meeting in December. And at that time, they should have a slightly modified plan that addresses some of the outstanding issues that had been raised at the Planning Commission. There was an issue with sidewalk and a few other minor little things, so they'll have in front of everyone a more compliant set of plans for the board to consider.
Did the Planning Commission recommend approval conditioned upon them, as they do sometimes, right? Conditioned upon them making those changes? Or do they have to go back to the planning commission again? Considered.
They recommended approval. Most of the changes were kind of minor and cosmetic, but it's still stuff that needs to be done. And then they also have to look into one or two things.
The other question I have is not planning commission oriented, but, and you, I don't know if you have an answer now or not, but I know in my time on or the HARB liaison, they were fairly adamant about the fact that they would have to come back to HARB for final consideration about several things. And I believe that's still the case, that their opinion, and they were recommending, they reached out to me separately just before this meeting, so I apologize to the HARB person for not getting that info to you, but about splitting the preliminary and final, doing preliminary first, going to HARB, and then coming back to us for final. Can you opine on the regulatory requirement for that? I don't, if HARB has legitimate concerns, which they do, as you and I both know, they have been very, very much in detail review of this. So I'm just curious as to your thoughts.
Well, we know this has been going on for decades, literally, as they've gone through the Board of Supervisors, HARB. Over the last 3 years, they've been to HARB 5 times. And each time they kind of slowly got to the point where HARB was okay, although one of the last things they suggested was dropping 1 unit, which actually at the zoning hearing board proceeding, they did drop that last unit that HARB had a little bit of objection to. They will need to go in front of HARB for a recommendation on the actual building plans for the certificate of appropriateness. But I think they've already weighed in on the massing of the buildings, the size, the arrangement of them, porches, stuff like that.
I guess my follow-up is, oh, I'm sorry, you can't hear me? I'm sorry. In terms of risk to the developer, right? And risk to the township that something happens during the COA review with HARB, that it could somehow affect the plan. From a process perspective, do they go preliminary, final combo, and then go to HARB, or do they go preliminary, HARB, final? That seems to be a safer route from making sure things don't change too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And this is sort of, in some ways, a tough one because you'd like to have your building plans showing the exterior of the buildings as finalized as possible before you go to HARB. But you don't necessarily want to invest that money in preparing the final plans until you have your approvals in place. So, yeah, I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, they've got a lot of approvals in place, so I don't know how much risk they have on that end, but
Right.
that's not my decision to make. I'm just trying to, I've gotten the question from HARB, sort of regulatory, sort of process regulatory, sort of business decision, I guess, at the same time. So I just want to make sure it's clear to us on the board as to what they're supposed to be doing, given HARB's involvement.
Yeah, well, like I said, HARB is supposed to weigh in on like the final design of the building plans. And so that's the stage that they typically come in at. Although
Final site plan.
after the final site plan's been approved and building plans have been prepared. It's typically when they weigh in.
Yeah.
John, did you want to say something? James?
No, that was it. It was basically as far as what changes they were looking to make, if that's what they were looking for. I'm okay with
Yeah.
that.
And this has been an iterative process as they've gone along to the HARB and the Planning Commission and then back to HARB and then to the board and then to HARB and then to the Planning Commission and then to Zoning Hearing Board and now back to the board. And then they're going to have to go back to HARB again and then back to the board. So it's,
I don't mind if they do.
Yeah. it's been fun.
Yeah, the only other things I would say is I know there's been some back and forth with various various advisory boards about specific aspects. I would hope that they would, their attorney would talk to their engineers about considering pervious pavement and a few other features that would improve stormwater management at the site. And also make sure that and I know this is a difficult spot here, but the site triangles and site distances at the actual point are safely designed. I know those are the two things that come up frequently. So if they could be ready to discuss those items, that would be appreciated.
Absolutely.
And generally for the public, just so they understand, the extension of time is something the developer is granting the township, because we don't want to be in a position where it's deemed approved if there's a continuous denied or the extension is not granted. So just want to make sure everybody, I know the people on the board understand that, but the people watching at home, that's an issue that we need to make sure that everybody understands. So. And that's again, that's state legislation requires it. I know I sound like a broken record tonight, but that's where we are.
Is there any public comment? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. B,
You have in front of you the resolution 23-27, which is to adopt and submit to DEP the sewage facilities planning module for the 1101 Big Oak Road subdivision. You may recall that was approved a while ago by the board. They now have all of their approvals in place in order to submit to the DEP once we sign the appropriate documents.
is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by James and seconded by John. Any comment from the board? Any comment?
None at this time.
Thank you. Okay, public comment? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye, raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry about the raise the hand part. We have to get out of that habit. COVID is over. Not really, but mostly. Okay, well then we're done with community development and we're on to agenda item number 11, which is supervisor's report. I don't have any report at this time. So John?
I was unable to attend the Disability Advisory Board because I was at a budget meeting. So that's a legit excuse for those who are wondering. But one of the things that they are working on is advocating for legislation and the Pennsylvania State Legislature to require elevators for buildings that are 3 stories or higher. And it's about accessibility. We've had a lot of questions in the community for people who want to rent at some of our new apartment buildings, but they don't want to be on the first floor and they need an elevator to get to the second floor. So they will be advocating with our state legislature and state reps on that. And as well, they did look at some building plans as well, but that's all I have.
Thank you. James?
I have nothing to report on my regular boards. I do want to make a note that I did sit through the Park and Rec meeting last night, not as a participant, but just as a passive listener. The Park and Rec Board did an outstanding job at identifying gaps that we have in the budget, and they are moving forward with a plan that's going to assist overall to help us get to at least a more comfortable position. So I just want to say I appreciate it.
Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, let's see. I attended whether they knew I was there or not, because I was actually at the township building and couldn't get they couldn't hear me. I attended the EAC meeting last week just prior to the Maple Vale Stormwater meeting. They sent the board a couple of recommendations for next year that you can take a look at. The main thing they talked about though is the ongoing tree planting plan. There's been some revisions discussed to specific species of trees. I believe there will be some additional discussions at the next EAC meeting in early December.
That is correct, yes.
Also, I wanted, heart goes out to Mr. Supervisor Lewis over here, as he suffered a terrible loss this week as his Villanova Wildcats lost 76-72 to the Penn Quakers. I know it's tough, but we get one every now and again.
Colin is not here, so we're moving along to agenda item number 12, other business. Is there any other business?
There is none, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Agenda item 13 is appointments and reappointments. I don't believe we have any at this point. Okay, so we are at agenda item 14, which is public comment. Is there any public comment in the room? If you could state your full name and whether or not you're a resident of the township, please.
My name is Frank Arminante. I'm a resident of Lower Makefield Township at 20 Malin Drive. And fortunately or unfortunately, I started this about approximately a year and a half ago to 2 years. I've owned the property for approximately 2.5 years. The property consists of mainly 2 lots that I'm not developing right now, and I don't know if I ever will. And also my home, and the whole thing together there is approximately about 3 acres. In back of the property used to belong to the people that sold to the middle sector, middlemen. And they sold the property under conditions that I'm aware of, that because they needed the money for $25,000.
Sir, can you bring the mic a little bit closer to you? Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Perfect. Thank you.
And I had no affiliation at that point, but I found out about it. And they sold the property to the town in order to build a sewer, which was needed under the statutes here for purposes of making it, an appropriate place to live in. So what happens is I noticed the property in the back, and I realized that right from the start that I think I should like to purchase that property. So I started a process with Jim Masuski about a year and a half ago, which there was a lot of things going on in the town. COVID was involved at that point, and it took a long time, for about a year and a half, before finally it actually went to council for a notice that it had to be done by bid, because the appraisal of the property came in at approximately $6,500, and I think $6,000 was the limit. So I said, no problem, let's do that. Now, I did make an unfortunate move in not attending this meeting, because no one really actually knew who I was or where I was coming from. Now, I'll give you a little bit about my background, in all humility. It just happens to be a pretty big background. I went to school until I was 30. I have a CPA, law degree, a master's in law, tax degree, etc. That brought me around the world practically. And I represented a treasure hunter, Mel Fisher in Florida, which found about $1 billion in the ocean. And it was a very interesting trip and a 12-year project for myself. I came back to Princeton because I was always involved in restaurants. I owned 8 restaurants. I own 1 now. My family owned one for 50 years in Princeton called The Alchemist and Barrister on Witherspoon Street, right to the entrance of Princeton University. And that has nothing to do with what I want to do. I just wanted to give you my background to know who you are, now who I am. When I bought this property, I bought it in an LLC. I own 100% of the LLC. I did that for various reasons, for protection, and ultimately what I may do with the property. But I decided distinctly that I really want to keep this property. The buildings are 110 years old, and that's the real reason why I really bought it, because it had beautiful structure. I have a construction company called Princeton Builders in Princeton, and it was a real challenge, but a pleasure challenge, because it's a beautiful building, and the property is gorgeous. It's got about 62 trees, 100 foot high on it, on the acreage, and it's all right next to the property and around it. Now, I went out and did an analysis with a arborvitae, and I have a letter for you from him concerning his concerns about the property and what the problems are, because he did an actual inspection of the property. He went out and inspected the property. Very hard to do, because it's very dense. It has a lot of brush, a lot of underground, and I'm sorry.
No, if you wouldn't mind, I'm beginning to think that maybe not everyone knows what we're talking about. So I'm just going to back up for a second and say there was a proposal before the board. There's a tiny parcel of land that abuts this gentleman's property. And he had said is it possible for me to take over control of that property because it's the trees and whatnot are on that are in disrepair. Unfortunately, as he said, we didn't understand the full content of the request, and he's now trying to give some background. So if anyone's wondering what we're talking about, I just want to put it into some context.
What
for
I'll
you.
do is, at this point, you don't have to read this now, but this is a report by Barbara Vine. It was much easier on a boat writing a SEC document for the treasurer than preparing for you, to be honest. In any event, that is a letter from an arborvitae. Now, I don't think I have to, but I will. I don't think I have to delineate to you that there are a number of ordinances, and actually the property, if you look at this map, and I'm going to hand this map out, and you can pass it around.
Do you want us to hold this or do you need it for, okay. And everyone should listen intently, but know that if any action is going to be taken, it's going to have to be put back on an agenda. So this
That's all right.
information will be made available.
The property is outlined in red that I wish to purchase. And you'll note by the property line that goes across it, 98% of it is in Yardley. And the other portion is the property that I really don't need to buy, which is 1.4 acres. And I'm buying about 45% of the property. And it's right directly behind my property. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Right now, the town doesn't have the time, I'm sure. There's pictures I sent to you. I don't know if anybody was able to review them, but they show a clear indication of some huge monster tree trunks that were taken down logically because they had to put 3 poles on the property in order to go to the pumping station. I had no problem with that. I knew it was going to happen anyway. And I've been here for 2 years. I don't even know it's there except when they were fixing it at one point. And it's a beautiful job. The only thing I would say also is right next to that line that you have there, where you can see the actual division of what I want to purchase, what you already own, the whole thing. There's a corner piece there right to the end that there's it's not on my property. It goes about 10 feet from not my property, the property I intend to purchase. Sorry about that. And it runs around 10 feet to the bottom of it. And there's a complete drop there. It's at least 30 feet straight down. This property can't be built on. If anybody wanted to build on it, they're crazy. And I'm not looking to build on it. All I want to do is to keep it clean, and the way the statutes in the township and Yardley state, you have to keep it clean. I'll give you a copy of those statutes, those ordinances, not statutes. So I looked at them, and if you read the letter from the arborvitae, he indicates all the problems that could be there, and you have to take care of this. Now, I know how to do it because I have friends of mine in Princeton who took care of many properties of mine, and they could go in there and clean this up. Unfortunately, for me, if I do buy it, it's going to cost me between $20,000 and $30,000 to really make it viable and nice and pretty. Now, am I making it pretty? Would I make it pretty for me? Yes, but also for the town, because every single property right down that strip for about 3/4 of a mile, these properties are well maintained, and they've got. Now, I don't intend to go that far, but I want to make it look like you're entering a nice area. And the basis of the pictures I gave you, see my property, you can see the way the trees are up about 9 feet, and there's nothing under it. Now, there's no grass going to grow here. I can't imagine that, because this is a different piece of property. Mine is sort of flat. This goes like that. It goes from my 100-foot high off the 100-foot high the property is, and it goes down 365 feet to zero to the canal. And it goes like that. It's amazing. I try to walk it, and I put on a hazmat suit. Not really. I put on a suit and I was able to get through, but it was really tough. And that's not the problem. It's just that there's a lot of, I found out later when you read that letter, that there's a lot of things that are there that I might have gone over, poisonous things, and they even have the moccasins from the canal that come out of there. There's a lot of deer on there. There's red fox. I don't intend to touch with them. They're okay. In fact, they come on my property all the time. That's 6 or 7 of them. They keep rolling around, and you stare at them and they just look at you. It's an amazing situation. But in any event, I would like to say this. I'm willing to take on the expense and the maintenance every year to take care of this if you would sell it to me for the fair market value price that you've already attained. And there's a bid on it. I know that. And if somebody bids it, they're going to be crazy because they don't have any need to it. They can't do anything with it except I could do something to make it look good. And I intend to. I mean, I take pleasure in doing it because it's well, I have a girlfriend that's an artist. Amazing. They're really nice people, but she's out there telling me you can't use any freaking chemicals. You can't do this. You can't do that. So she wants to make it really nice. And she knows a lot about plants. She actually designed the whole thing that we put around the house. And she's really interested because she likes to sit in the back there without the mosquitoes and the hornets and the bees. The bees we don't mind. She likes bees, but there's other things there that come out. So in order to save you money, I'll spend the money. All I want to do is purchase it. And I suggest to you, and I'm going to give you another document, that you look at this document for purposes of determining how to set up a model grant easement.
Okay. For a conservation easement.
The conservation easement is really not an easement per se, per the law, and I know your counsel would know this. It's a plot. It's a measure. It's a mets and bounds description of the property, and it never was recorded by the state. It was never recorded in either Yardley. It was never recorded in Upper Makefield Township. So you got something that you can't control as a conservation easement. I'm prepared, in connection with, at the same time that I would purchase it, I would enter into a conservation easement that you like. The only thing you would need once you do this is the easement of the poles and the light. Now, the other thing you got to be aware of, we were concerned about this because there's those poles have a big line that goes into the pumping station. Now, it's foregone conclusion that probably will never happen, but you never know. We saw lightning in there, and that lightning hit those poles and sparks anything that hits that brush. We're going to have a fire there. So you got to have insurance on it. I intend to put insurance on that property to make sure that nobody gets injured by it. I mean, really, it's a difficult piece of property. And I would suggest to the town that if you do decide to let me purchase it, that the property just to the right of me, where your corner comes, that 10-foot should have a fence from their fence, that fence by the pumping station, because if any kids get back there, it would be disastrous, actually.
Okay, John, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something?
I have a suggestion for you, Mr. Armamente, that might help address your concerns and the township's concerns. And that is, you did provide us some documentation and some lovely pictures. My suggestion would be to have the EAC take a look at this.
It's already been discussed by the EAC.
Oh,
They
okay.
recommended it against.
Okay.
I'm the liaison to the EAC, so we talked about this at previous.
I don't know, what is the EAC?
Environmental Advisory Council.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What was their concern?
What do you,
Yeah, what was their opposition?
so is essentially everything that I iterated that when this last came up, but I'll say it again since he's here. One, it is a conservation easement designed to maintain a wild land. So it's a heavily forested area in its natural state. So cleaning it up, as it were, would be impacting whether you like the visual aesthetic of it or not, would be negatively impacting the ecology of the area, which is the whole point for having conservation easement. It also maintains, as it is on the canal, it also maintains a nice, what we refer to as a riparian buffer to make sure that we keep the, one, from a stormwater perspective, riparian buffers slow down stormwater. Two, they clean it up by that surface mass, but, organic issues coming up. And they just generally filter stuff before it gets to the canal from a land perspective. And I would, as a environmental scientist myself, we were just talking about trying to preserve open space. I think it's important that we do not sell this and keep it as open space. I do think, though, the very good point that this gentleman brings up, and I've talked about it with our township manager, is to me, it was a little bit of a head scratcher that we would put poles and a wire through a forested area.
They did.
Rather than for a short hop, where honestly, we should look into, personal opinion and recommendation, we to look into burying those particular utilities to the station so that in the event of lightning, as you mentioned, or a windstorm or anything else, that we don't knock those poles over and knock out service to the Stackhouse pump station, which we just spent a lot of money building and upgrading. And two, it prevents, obviously, any potential issues with losing power generally and other negative impacts that happen when you lose poles and wires.
So may I respond?
You can, but I'll offer you this first. There's a lot of this information for us to digest, and one supervisor has stated his opinion, and there's 5 of us, even though one's not here. So I think it would be good if we all had an opportunity to think about this and then reach back out to you.
I understand that. In fact, I was going to say at the end that if you like, you have the right to go inspect it yourself and see what's going on there. And I don't intend to violate any provisions that you're interested in keeping, not at all. I would never do anything that you wouldn't want to do under a conservation easement that would essentially delineate everything that has to be done to make sure it complies with your concerns of the DEA. I would do that.
DAC.
The nature of a conservation easement, though, is to not clear anything, to not make it into clear the understory, clear tree, just select clear trees for the sake of doing that. I also recognize Supervisor McCartney's an appraiser. He could opine on this a little bit. Extending a private property all the way to a water source like the canal may impact property values significantly. And the township giving up essentially open space for about $6,000 or $6,500. I don't think that's a net positive for the township in terms of how we're looking at open.
Well, if you need a positive on that, tell me what you want me to pay. I'm not concerned about that. And I'm not concerned about the fact that I could comply with everything that you want to do in connection with this property. I don't intend to go down there and boat. I don't intend to go down there and fish. I'm not a fisherman. I don't even have to go down to the canal. I just want to protect the property that's within at least 100 feet of me and make sure that it does comply. And I'll tell you something, if you don't have a conservation easement on this is my opinion, and I've dealt with this before, you're going to have a lot of problems with making it just an open space type of thing, because there's a lot of ordinances that are here in Yardley and in your own town that say you have to do certain things. You have to clean it up one way or another. You're going to have to do something. And I don't want to be the person, because I don't like to complain about anything. I want to just live my life and be happy. But if that property stays the way it is, especially with the wood that's there now, it's immense. It's the length of this, that high. And that was from the trees they took down. They never removed it. I know there was I wanted to take it out and I wanted to do some cleanup. The bricks and another place in Princeton were going to charge me $20,000 to $25,000 to do. I wanted to take care of that. That's not saying that I'm paying only $6,500. I would take care of that. You wouldn't have to pay for that, because that's what it's going to cost you, without a doubt.
Thank you.
And that's enough. Is that enough for it?
Yep.
Okay. So whenever you need any questions or anything, I'm going to be more than happy to give you the answers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Don't yield this time. Come on up. Oh, change your mind. Same rules, state your full name and whether or not you're a resident of the township.
Yes, hi, my name is Evelyn Patterson and I am a resident at 2222 Yardley Road in Yardley. And I'm also here with my neighbor Susan Finney, who's at 2220. What I want to address, or what we want to address tonight, is the Yardley Morrisville Road traffic problem as we see it. And we've discussed this with David. And we've also discussed it with police. And we've also discussed it with Fred Weiss, who I believe just retired. So we've been actively involved over the past 5 years to try and obtain a remedy for the speed traffic issue on the road. The issue is specifically for the traffic traveling north and south between the Burroughs line at the Wells Fargo Bank and Black Rock Road, which is not complying. Most of the traffic in our viewpoint is not complying with the 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. What we would like for the town and PennDOT to help reduce the excessive speed on this road is to put in a permanent electronic speed sign with red and blue flashers to be installed in the middle of that section. That would be approximately 2216 Yardley Road. And then a reduce speed ahead sign as well. We've monitored this problem for over 6 years. We've asked for help from all of you. And we're just at a point now where we're hoping that maybe these two solutions could be a help in reducing the speed on the road. I think the biggest offenders on the road are trucks, dump trucks, and then unfortunately, sometimes we even have school buses that exceed the speed limit. My husband was going out to get the mail the other day and a bus flew by at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it certainly was not going 35 miles per hour. So what we would like to see is whether this is a possibility. We know that you have to get a permit from PennDOT to get a permanent electronic sign to be put in on the road. So that's our request. And Susan, if you have anything else that you want to say. Also,
Susan Finney, 2220 Yardley Road. We have, as Evelyn said, met with our town manager, Mr. Kratzer, as well as worked with Chief of Police Caluzzi. We found that when there was the driver feedback sign to provide feedback, that there was definitely a slowdown of traffic on the road. We also know that our police department is stretched and we're not asking for daily patrols there, but we do know that when police are present, people definitely slow down, even if they see it once in a while. We have a lot of police who come out of the borough from Yardley chasing cars the opposite direction. And that definitely has an impact. But it's gotten to the point where when you feel like you have to scoot out into a 6 to 8 foot area to get your mail and you're concerned about being hit, it's really time for some help. Neighbors to the left of us are closer to the Edgewood Road. 2 of those neighbors have had traffic hits. One there with their daughter in the car and another one with his wife in a car coming out of their driveways because people just race down the road. We don't want to wait until someone's killed. And we really would like to get your help in helping to improve the quality of life on that residential road, which can at times sound like Route 1. We do know that we had requested a traffic survey from PennDOT. They had indicated by sharing preliminary information with David that there were approximately, I think it was either 43 or 5,300 cars that went by in a 24-hour period. We weren't sure where that traffic survey took place because we never saw anything. But they said that the average speed was about 7 miles over the limit, which anyone who knows statistics, you get up into the thousands, that's not telling you what the outliers are. You can have 100 people going 100 miles an hour and then have several thousand doing the speed limit, and that brings it back down into the average. We requested the raw data so we could look at that. We were told we could not have it. We have been in touch with Senator Santasiero's office, and they actually told us yesterday that that report had not been finalized. So we don't know what happened to it. And that was back in the June timeframe. So we are imploring you for some help to get this problem addressed and are willing to take any suggestions that you
Well,
have.
we're very sympathetic to what you're saying. The manager, when you brought this to his attention, got on PennDOT immediately, talked to Senator Santasero and got PennDOT to move. And you don't usually get PennDOT to move that quickly. And PennDOT did do a study, as you said, as you mentioned. And unfortunately, we're really limited because it is a state road. Everything that's done on that road, other than police enforcement by us, has to be approved by PennDOT. So I don't know if we ever made application to PennDOT for the permanent speed signs or not. I don't recall. And I don't know if they ever gave us an answer to that. So we'll have to look into that, I presume.
Yeah, I mean, we had the temporary signage out there. I don't know that the board ever discussed the issue of permanent installation of
Yeah, well, the
speed signs.
cost factor would be one thing, but getting the approval from PennDOT and petitioning PennDOT to place those at those locations in both directions would be something that we would have to try and see if we get approved first. And then we'd have to see if we would have to bear the cost of that or if it would be a state cost or whatever. So I think that's the only thing left really to do with this issue. If you could think of something else for me in your engineering expertise, I'd
Maybe it's-
appreciate that.
Maybe it's safe, but go ahead, Dan.
So the other thing we have, it's unfortunate, it's a state road, but we also have a Citizens Traffic Commission. This is what they do, is they address these issues. More on township roads, because we can really act on them more quickly, but they do have a toolkit that they can look at and show you and discuss with you some options. Again, we'd have to apply to PennDOT for any of these, but I think it would be a worthwhile conversation for you to, I'm the liaison this year to the CTC, so.
Well, if I remember, the report gave no recommendations for anything to be done. They didn't feel as though there was a problem there.
Yeah, that's based on the
That's
PennDOT
pretty much based
study
on
that was
PennDOT
done. So,
PennDOT
yeah,
studies.
yeah. So
That doesn't preclude us from doing something.
Right.
If we can get approval
Right.
from PennDOT.
So they're another group that you can talk to. They can't say yes or no to you about anything really, but they can show you some of the tools in the toolbox that, and say, okay, here's what might be done here and here based on our experience. Again, they're all citizen volunteers, but they've been at this a long time and they're pretty good. And then they work very closely with chief and the department on all those issues as well as our staff here. So that might be another option.
Is that something that can be done in tandem?
Susan, what did the senator's office say? I mean, again, okay.
You can't say anything unless you're at the mic, and identify yourself again, please.
Again, 2222 Yardley Road. So I've had several conversations with the senator's office. Basically, what they said in the summertime was to now address the Board of Supervisors. You've done as much as you can as what you've expressed with all your letter writing, and meeting with the various people. And actually the last time when I spoke with them, which was last week, they recommended that we request that you consider getting that permit from PennDOT for the permanent sign. The speed really is just become incredible. It is dangerous. And I think just can keep talking. We've been at this now for 5 or 6 years. And I just don't want to go on another 5 or 6 years without getting a resolution somewhere down the road. And also, we recognize that there was a reduction in the speed limit going into Newtown at that major intersection where what's the name of that intersection? It's as you enter the town and there's a gas station and if you turn left, then they have the post office down the way.
That's Yardley Newtown.
Yeah, Yardley Newtown Road, and I'm thinking of the intersection where they actually this summer, they took the speed limit from 35 to 25. And when they did that, they put out, the wheel away at first to alert people that it was happening. But then obviously as it became more recognized that that is now the new speed limit, it's 25. And that's a long stretch going into the center of Newtown. So what we were hoping was that the same thing could be done in Yardley.
We can't change the speed on state roads.
Right. But
And that's, so we hear you, we hear what you want. I think Dan's gonna talk to the CTC. I would recommend that you come to their meeting.
Yeah,
We have next.
I don't know if just for, so just for purposes of the public conversation. So this is what we received from PennDOT. Speed study has been completed. The results of the speed study produced an 85th percentile speed of 42 miles per hour. And then there's reference to 8,196 vehicles were analyzed over a 24-hour period. Average speed was 38 miles per hour. Neither the analysis of the crash data nor review of sight distance restrictions along the stretch of roadway identified anything that would suggest a further reduction of the 35 mile an hour per hour speed limit zone. So based on the engineering parameters reviewed, a reduction in the speed limit is not justified. That's PennDOT's response.
Yeah, no, but at this point, I think they're asking about
Signage, yeah, no, understood. I just want to make sure that,
Yeah.
um,
And, for the record, I'm in favor of the you're going too fast, not the how fast are you going. Yes, John.
Signage can be helpful, and then sometimes it doesn't add as much value. There are other traffic calming measures that we have done in other cases that will do lane diets. There may be alternatives.
Any speed tables?
Yeah, we've done that. People don't like that, and they not always effective. Speed bumps, yeah.
It's not quite as.
Yeah.
We've done that too,
But
yeah.
again, it's a state road.
Yeah, so that's what limits our authority. But there are things that potentially, if we were to look at this, to get suggestions probably from Safe, who's our traffic engineer, and that's why going to the CTC, if there's something we could suggest outside of, try for signs, what have you. But if there's something we could do outside of subtle that could reduce speeds, trust me, people say, well, it can work. And I will tell you, as much as people don't like the roundabouts, they're effective. Well, you're not on social media, but so.
So why don't you, if you would please,
I was
email
gonna give you the
Dan.
date, actually, I have.
Oh, yeah.
The next CTC meeting, it's here. They say right here is December 18th at 7:30. And it should be on the township website in case you lose your piece of paper, don't want to watch the video.
Do you want
Uh,
this for your record or not?
I don't know what it is, but you're welcome to hand me anything. We don't actually put it into a record as part of it, but
If you read it, then it's in the record.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah. And we'll take it from there. Thank you so much for coming. Is there any more public comment in the room? Jack, come on up. Oh, I see what you did. You said you were done and you told her to
Sent
come
me
up.
instead, yeah.
on, Sarah.
I'll remember my name this time, April Bowles Clower, 20 Mapleville Drive. I was actually staying around for traffic on our side also. We did have flashing signs for a little while about the speed limit, and they're gone again. And with the holidays and people whipping off 95 to get into town because they're going to a holiday party in town, we're seeing that again picking up. And the second people get to Dolington and they see that 35 mile an hour sign right there, they gas it right down Taylorsville. So
Chief,
even
maybe
coming
we
here
could-
tonight was hard to make a left turn. Just
I don't know where the signs are, but maybe we could get them deployed on either end of that road.
yeah, we had them for a while, and I don't know when they went away.
We moved them throughout the
Probably
township.
alternate, yeah.
Yep. I mean, look,
But if we can get in, we're like the opposite end of you all. So if we can bookend this process, we're great at letter writing too. so-
speeding is an issue throughout the township,
Yeah.
sadly, right? And I don't know where we're all going so quickly, but we're
I
all
know.
going quickly, so
We'll take a look
it's a
at that.
problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment in the room? Is there any public comment online?
We have one caller on the line. I can bring Lisa in now.
Great, thank you.
Lisa's in the room with us now. And Lisa, it starts
Can
to unmute.
you please state your full name and whether or not you're a resident of the township?
Yes, my name is Lisa Tenney. I live at 156 Pinnacle Circle, Yardley, PA.
Go ahead, please.
Yes. So I noticed on the agenda was a notice about the 1101 Big Oak Road development proposed next to Yardley Crest where I live. And they need to submit papers to the DEP. I think that nobody was present. Maybe Dan wasn't able to make it at the meeting probably over a year ago, where we came out and stated our issues of a development and the taking down of unnecessary trees and the situation downstream at Rock Run. I don't know. I just feel you're setting yourself up for another Maple Vale problem. These are creeks. There's a problem with contamination of the creeks, and you're taking out a part of that filtration and water absorption big time in that small portion. It's only like, I don't know, 5 acres. So a lot of people had concerns, and I'm going to let you know ahead of time. And I would hope the DEP looks at this smartly and environmentally, because no one else has really considered it. It's really high in elevation compared to where Rock Creek, Run Creek is. And there's many older homes sitting along it, including, you know, the schools. There were a lot of problems, and it somehow got pushed through like everything else. I wish Dan was there. I wish somebody said, maybe we should think about this. Maybe it's not the right place, but nobody did. Also, I live, my backyard faces Stony Hill Road, and I have constant, speeding problems. Honestly, even buses, school buses, move very quickly through all our roads. God bless you all, and God bless our environment.
Thank you.
Lisa, if you can hear me, this is Dan, Supervisor Grenier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I recall this one. I recall this one very well. In fact,
Yeah.
I was there and I had quite a heated discussion with the attorney who I forget his name about the tree removal.
There were attorneys.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with you about your concerns by any means. I won't get into how things were voted on and all that, but I do agree. We did have quite the I almost call it an argument, given the tone that was taken by the attorney at the time on this particular issue. The agenda item tonight, though, is specific to the DEP reviewing basically a sewage review, which is separate from a typical site plan review, land development, et cetera. It's very specific to how the development will tie into to our sewage system, essentially. So that's going to be the focus of their review. They have limited ability, I think, and our solicitor could correct me on this, to comment or opine on any other issues associated with tree removal that I know you and I find.
They have a very
near and
narrow
dear.
lane on this.
Yes, they do. So they're going to be focused on the sewage issues, but I do not disagree with you at all about the concerns about tree removal, effects on stormwater management, et cetera, that are happening as part of this project. I appreciate your phone call.
No, thank you. But I have one more question. So what about that extra water that's running down there's a road, I forget, it's off of Big Oak, goes into the Penn Middle School. And there's the Rock Run Creek. How does one mitigate that? You know, because it's both runoff and it's due to underground water saturation. You know, there lots of people know about the above water problem and streets, but it's also, you know, filtered out and then, you know, groundwater.
Yeah, so
You can only put so much water in the ground before it has to surface.
well, I will say I'm aware of your higher educational background, Dr. Tenney. So I think any development in this, any proposed development that gets approved has to, in theory anyway, has to when they design their stormwater management plan, their post-construction condition has to be better. This is a very general comment, has to be better, at least as good as their existing condition, or what we refer to as the pre-construction condition. So based on the modeling that is done by their engineers and the review that is done by the township's engineers, they have to agree upon the fact that the models that are run for individual developments meet those criteria that are set by both the DEP at the state level and the township stormwater ordinances as well. And they all have to, and they have to use very specific best management practices, or BMPs, to manage that stormwater. One of the things you heard tonight, if you were listening earlier, is that the township, the board voted to put out an RFP to professional services to further review and improve upon our existing stormwater management regulations, because I think the board as a whole, without speaking for anyone, but I think generally the board recognizes that our stormwater ordinances, which are at least as good as the state's, can always be improved, because we recognize the concern about stormwater in the town. That's why we also have the land studies folks doing a watershed study in the northern part of the town that was affected by the storms on July 15th, and some other and several other stormwater projects that we're doing. Does that answer all your questions and solve all those issues right now? No, not at all.
Well,
be the first
no,
to say that.
yes,
But we're
thank you.
moving that way.
Thank you. I know you're committing yourself to thinking and designing this, but honestly, when I went to that meeting, there was an older woman, and I'm pretty old, I'm 64, so she must have been over 70, living in that adjacent older neighborhood, and she was really upset, okay? And I can see where my backyard is pretty soggy, and I know where she lives because I looked at a house near her house, and honestly, I don't know that any of this is going to address her issues, and it was heartbreaking. So you can go back and maybe see that, but thank you. I know you're all committed and trying, but you know, remember that each of your decisions affects real people in a real way. Unlike me, you know, I just teach biology. But your decisions, you know, affect our everyday life in LMT. And thank you. I know it can't be easy.
Thank you.
But no
Thank you.
job is easy.
Good night.
Good night.
Any other public comment? Say no. Nobody else on the line, right?
There's no other public comment online.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And with that, there's no more business before the board this evening. The meeting is adjourned. Have a good night and happy Thanksgiving to everyone.